Golf is probably the worst sport I've ever played in my entire fucking life. I just don't understand it. I don't understand how you can be tour level 1 minute and hit the most incredible, perfect shot, and then the next shot, it's like you've never picked up a club in your life. I just do not understand it. It is the most frustrating, infuriating, incredibly fun, best sport I have ever played, and I fucking hate it. And I can't wait to do it all over again. Hello, guys, and welcome to the LG Fitness Podcast. If you can't tell, I played golf this morning and I had a terrible round. Um, yeah, I don't know if you could tell by the fact that I'm very frustrated, but here we are. I suppose it's like with anything, I haven't really played as much as I have been recently. And naturally, I'm not as good as what I was a few months ago when I was playing a little bit more consistently. I suppose it's a bit of a lesson for everything in terms of your consistency with things. The more consistent you are with something, the more you practice something, the better you're going to get at it. And the fact that I've not been playing as much golf recently, it's only natural that I'm probably a lot more shit at it. But nevertheless, still very, very frustrating. Um, but yeah, I think I sort of spoke about this actually when in the genetics podcast. For anyone that hasn't watched it, go watch that. I think it was episode 3. Um, Naturally, we're going to have like a predisposition to be better at certain things than other people. So some of us will be naturally gifted at football, some of us will be naturally gifted at sprinting, golf, whatever it is. But whatever sport you do, whatever activity you do, if you're consistent with something over time, you're gonna get better at it. Simple as that. Regardless of whether someone's better than you or more gifted than you are, if you practice over time, you're going to get better. You may not be as good as someone else who has that natural ability, but when it comes to especially like the gym training, all of that sort of stuff that I sort of speak about more often, if you're consistent with it, if you practice, although some days might be good, some days might be bad, you're going to get better at it over time. So yeah, that's my intro to today's podcast. I'm going to be talking about something completely unrelated to what I've just spoke about today, and I'm going to talk about protein. So you have probably heard many PTs, many online fitness influencers, whoever you listen to, whoever it may be, speak about protein. It's a very common topic within the fitness industry. Protein, protein, protein. You probably hear about it all the time. So today I wanted to discuss it. I wanted to discuss why it's important. I wanted to discuss the health benefits, and I also wanted to discuss why it's important, especially when it comes to your fat loss goals. Um, and sort of give you a bit more of an understanding on protein. So, in terms of what protein is, so in terms of its basic definition, if you like, essentially proteins are made up of chemicals called amino acids, and the body uses those amino acids. So essentially, those amino acids, you've probably heard people say that they're the building blocks, and essentially that's true. Our bodies use amino acids as like the building blocks for structural support. So we use it for growth and repair mainly. So building and repairing muscles, bones, cartilage, ligaments, skin, all those sorts of structures that help support the body. That's what we use protein for, is all of those things. We also use it as well to make hormones, enzymes, and antibodies as well. So even for like proper immune function, then protein is going to be very key to help us obviously fight off infection, all of those types of things as well. So that is what protein is. That's what the body uses protein for. So just to go over that again, we build muscles, bones, cartilage, ligaments, skin, all of that sort of stuff. That's what we use protein for. And what you'll find is, in terms of when it comes from a health perspective, at least, you are probably consuming enough protein. There's studies suggest that it's very uncommon for people to have a protein deficiency. I think I read earlier it was like one in 500, maybe. I'd have to double check that, but yeah, it's very uncommon for people to have a protein deficiency. And looking at the recommended dietary allowance for health, that's unsurprising. So the recommended dietary allowance is around 0.75 grams or zero point 0.8 grams per kilo of body weight. And you may have heard people sort of recommend much higher than this before, which we'll get onto a little bit later. But in terms of health, in terms of not being protein deficient, then as long as you're consuming 0.75 grams or a little bit more, then you're going to be absolutely fine. It works out about 45 grams for a female, about 55 grams for a male, which is pretty low, right? But again, talking from a health point of view, for all of those benefits from like immune function, making sure that we're strong enough. What defines strong enough is debatable, but in terms of from a health perspective, as long as you're getting that amount, then you're going to be not protein deficient, essentially. Obviously, if you're more active, then you're going to need more protein because obviously you're going to be using your muscles more. So in terms of recovering from whatever activity it is you're doing, even if it's just walking, even if it's running, if you're going to the gym, all of those types of things, then obviously you're going to need a much higher protein intake in order to help build and repair your muscles, your bones, all of that sort of stuff. So there's just something to bear in mind. Obviously, like I said, the recommended dietary allowance is quite low, but again, that is based on not being protein deficient. If you were to eat less than that, then you potentially have some issues in terms of having like brittle bones or weakness in your muscles, poor immune function. You might be more prone to be getting ill, stuff like that. So again, like I said, in terms of a health perspective, that's sort of the recommended dietary allowance. So you're probably fine in terms of a health perspective. But if you are more active, if you're doing stuff, if you're listening to this podcast, then I imagine you probably go to the gym, you probably do some form of exercise, or at least you're wanting to do more exercise. So you're going to need a much higher protein allowance. We'll come on to roughly how much that wants to be a little bit later on. But yeah, in terms of protein, so you might be wondering, well, how does this relate to getting in better shape? How does this relate to building more muscle? How does this relate to dropping body fat? How does this relate to me achieving my health and fitness goals? And we've obviously spoke about protein being the building blocks, and I think therefore, we always have the assumption protein and we link that to sort of muscle growth, right? We sort of see potentially adverts and things like that. I don't know if you've seen that advert of get this man some protein. I can't remember the advert. It's like this guy coming out of the water and he's like, someone's carrying him and he's led out and he's like this massive, muscly guy. Yeah, I can't remember the advert what it was for. Well, protein of some sort, I'm guessing. But yeah, I think we sort of associate protein with building muscle, and that's true, right? In order to grow more muscle, in order to build more muscle, we need to make sure that we're consuming enough protein. I think most people understand that from the perspective of we need protein to build and repair. So, in order to build and repair muscle, in order to grow more muscle, we need more protein. So that sort of makes sense. Now, then you get people and there's like a little bit of maybe a misconception. There's people that are like, oh well, I don't want to build muscles, so I don't need to consume as much protein. And obviously we've already spoke from it from a health perspective, but we're also going to come on to a fat loss perspective in a minute. Now, I've had this conversation in the past about protein shakes, and this is sort of the example I bring up, right? People seem to think that protein shakes are this muscle building magic formula, and it's not. Protein shakes are just a convenient source of protein. That's all it is. Like if you don't get enough protein, then a protein shake is probably going to be a good thing for you to consume because it's convenient, it's pretty cheap, and it's a good amino acid profile. We won't get into that today, but yeah, it's a good source of protein that's going to be, like I said, convenient. So protein shakes don't build muscle, they just provide you with protein. So again, it's just an example that I bring up because I've heard it in the past of, oh, I don't want to drink protein shakes because I don't want to build loads of muscle. I don't want to get bulky or anything like that. That's not going to happen from simply drinking a shake. And I know I used to think it. I remember when I was first starting out on my fitness journey, I wanted to get in better shape. I wanted to build more muscle. I thought, right, well, I'll just drink loads of protein shakes because that's going to help. But that's not how it works. In terms of building muscle, you need to make sure that your training's on point. You need to make sure that your recovery, your sleep, all of that's on point. And on top of that, you need to be making sure that you're consuming enough protein. If you're just consuming protein shakes and not training in the gym, then, well, you're not going to build more muscle. All right. So that's sort of like the common misconception I want to get out of the way. Like, if your goal is to lose weight, if your goal is to drop body fat, then you should still be consuming protein, and you should be consuming a lot more than that RDA that we spoke about of 0.75 that we spoke about earlier. Now, so what if I want to lose weight? So what are the benefits? Now, there are three major benefits that I'm going to go through to consuming a higher protein diet, to consuming more protein if your goal is fat loss. We've already spoke about it from a muscle building perspective. We've already spoke about it from that point of view. But if you want to lose weight, if your goal is not to build muscle, but you just want to lose weight, you want to get in better shape, you want to drop body fat, if that is your goal and you're not concerned with building muscle, then there are still three huge benefits to consuming more protein that I'm going to go through now. So, number one is the satiating effect. So, when we are looking to drop body fat, we need to create a calorie deficit. When we create a calorie deficit, we are going to be more likely to experience feelings of hunger. That is just natural. Our body is deficient of energy. So it's going to feel more tired. It's going to increase hunger levels so that we eat a little bit more so we can have that more energy. So when we create a calorie deficit, we're going to then be more predisposed to having higher levels of hunger. So protein is going to be very, very satiating. It's going to help keep us fuller for longer. So as we create a calorie deficit, we want to feel as full as we can whilst we're in a deficit. So protein is going to help you do that. Protein is going to help you feel more full for longer. So if we can consume foods that are high in protein, if we can consume a higher protein diet, then we are going to experience less hunger as a result, which is obviously beneficial if we are trying to lose weight. The second benefit is the metabolic effect of consuming more protein. So when we eat, our bodies break the food down through digestion. It requires energy to break down whatever food it eats. So it requires us to burn calories in order to digest whatever food we are digesting. Protein requires a lot more energy for our bodies to break down. It's harder for our bodies to break down protein than it is to break down carbohydrates or fats. Therefore, we are going to burn more calories as a result through the digestion process by consuming a higher protein diet. So again, that's two benefits there. Firstly, you're going to feel fuller for longer. Secondly, you're going to burn more calories through digestion by consuming a higher protein diet. And the final benefit is, we've sort of spoke about it, is maintaining the muscle that you already have. So as you create a deficit, you are going to be more at risk of losing muscle mass, which has many negative effects. But in terms of what we're trying to talk about here, in terms of a fat loss perspective or looking better, having more muscle and having less body fat is going to help you achieve a more defined, more toned, or a leaner physique. So if we consume more protein, it is going to help our body maintain the muscle that we already have. As like I said, we are going to be at more risk of losing muscle as we go into a deficit. It requires more energy for our body to maintain muscle. Having more muscle mass is going to require more energy. So you're going to burn more calories by having more muscle. So if we go into a deficit, then your body's going to look to conserve energy in some way. So losing muscle is a way of conserving energy because it requires a lot of energy to maintain that muscle. So we want to make sure that we're consuming a high protein diet so that we can maintain the muscle that we have. We can feel fuller and more satisfied for longer, and also it's going to help us burn more calories, which those three are going to have massive impacts on our ability to drop body fat, to lose weight, and look leaner. In terms of how much protein you should be eating, now you've probably heard different ranges of what amount of protein you should eat in the past. What I'd normally recommend is around 1.6 grams to 2.2 grams per kilo of body weight. Now, based off the RDA, that recommended dietary allowance of 0.75, that is almost double that. In fact, it's more than double that. All right. So that's that lower end of 1.6. And again, this depends on your goals. This depends on you as a person. This depends on your lifestyle, all of those different factors. But that range is, if you can sit within that range, then you're going to get the benefits of maintaining muscle, obviously that increased metabolic effect, and also feeling more full. Now, obviously, you can adjust this based on how you feel, because again, you can have too much protein and this could obviously lead to digestive issues and things like that. But again, it's how well you respond. A little bit about what I spoke about in terms of the genetics at the start. What works for you, what works for someone else. I can't literally prescribe you, say, oh yeah, 1.6 for everyone. It might be that 1.6 works for you. It might be that 2 grams per kilo works for you. It's finding what works for you and then adjusting it from there. So it might mean that you need more muscle, more protein at certain points in a dieting phase, or it might need less. For example, if you're looking to build muscle, you're going to be at less risk of losing muscle when you're in a caloric surplus. So you may not need as much protein. Obviously, you still want to fall within that range, and you probably want to push towards the higher range just to help you build more muscle. But you're going to be at less risk of losing muscle, so you might not need quite as much. But obviously, when you're in a dieting phase, and especially when you're in the deep depths of a dieting phase, when you're really lean, then your protein intake is going to want to be quite high to again help with the satiating effect, that metabolic effect, and also maintaining the muscle. Now, for some people who are carrying a lot of weight, carrying a lot of excess body fat, who are overweight, obese, now this obviously comes into a point of where you take your body weight, then you could end up with a really massive amount of protein that you're eating. If you're carrying an extra 20, 30, 40 kilos worth of body weight, well, then that's an extra potential 100 grams of protein that you've got to consume on top of what would be a normal. So for example, I've done calculations for people in the past, and I've worked with people that are like 150 kilos, but realistically they're not going to be eating 300 grams of protein in a day, even though you would take that body weight, times it by that range of 1.6 to a 2.2. But obviously, they're carrying a lot of excess body fat. Now, for those people, if you fall into that category, what you can do to get a more accurate amount of protein to eat in a day is take your goal body weight and then do the same calculation, or you could do it in your height. So you could take your height in centimeters, and then you could do that by one gram per centimeter, or you could do like 0.8, something like that. So if you were 6 foot, which is 180 centimeters, then you'd be looking at 180 grams of protein. Obviously, maybe a little bit less would be more appropriate. But again, it's about finding where you're at. And this is what I'm going to sort of speak about next is, well, how do I consume more? And it seems very obvious. It's just like, oh, well, just consume more protein. But that's not a very actionable advice that I can give you by just saying, well, just eat more protein. So first of all, you want to start where you're at. There's no point going from eating, say, 70 grams of protein a day to then going and consuming 200 grams a day. You're your digestive system, your body is not going to thank you for that. So what we want to do, just like with anything else, just like with your training, just like with walking, anything that you're new to, is we want to slowly build it up, get you used to having more and more protein. So first of all, what I would say, and this is exactly what I do with my clients, is I get them to do a food diary. So literally, by doing a food diary, just literally in your notes on your phone or piece of pen and paper, you could do it on an app or a tracking app, whatever. Write down what it is that you're eating on a consistent basis. Everything that you put in your mouth, steady. Everything that you eat on a daily basis, write it down. Just write it down and get some awareness of where you're currently at. Once you've done that for a week or so, what you can do is look back through that diary and then see, right, okay, where are my protein sources? If you're unsure, then obviously you could speak to a coach. You could reach out to me if you want, and we can go through your food diary together. I'm more than happy to do that for you. Just reach out and ask. But in terms of what our protein sources is, you've got like meat, fish, dairy products like yogurts, cheese isn't, I wouldn't really consider cheese a protein source. It's got protein in it, but it's more of a fat source. Eggs as well, again, high in fat, but again, decent protein in them. So normally say meat, fish, dairy, but again, meat and fish are going to be your main sources, depending on the type of dairy, like Greek yogurts and stuff like that, tend to have higher protein amounts. What I would say is a good source of protein needs to have about 10 grams of protein per 100 calories. So that's a good way to do it. So if you look at the packet on whatever it is, if you're curious about what you're consuming and you're a bit unsure, have a look at the back of the packet, have a look at the nutritional information. If it's got 10 grams of protein per 100 calories, then I'd say that that's a good protein source. That's somewhere where you want to include more of that if you can. Now, once you've got your food diary together, you could just go through that and have a look, right, where are my protein sources? Can I start including more of these? Can I maybe double up on my portion sizes of protein? So, for example, if you're having, say, I don't know, 100 grams of chicken breast, can you have 150, 200 grams of chicken breast? Can you increase it with your meals? Can you increase the portion sizes of your meals that include protein? So, can you increase it? Can you I've completely forgotten what I was going to say. Can you increase your portion size of protein per meal? So whatever it is you're currently having, can you double up on it? Can you just include more of that within your diet? I spoke about it already. Potentially protein shakes as well. Again, they're a very good source of protein. So can you include a protein shake if you're really struggling? I would prefer, in general, you get your protein from like good quality food sources, like your meat and your fish. There's nothing wrong with protein, but whey protein powder, there's nothing wrong with that, despite what some people will tell you on the internet. Just a convenient source of protein. If you're struggling to get enough protein, then adding something like that is going to be beneficial. Like I said, it's not going to make you grow loads of muscle overnight. It's just a very helpful, convenient way of getting in more protein. So that is what I would do to try and increase your protein, is create some awareness of where you're currently at with what you're consuming, and then start to increase those portion sizes a little bit more. I hope this podcast made a lot of sense. If you've got any questions regarding protein, if you've got any questions regarding your training, then please do reach out. My Instagram is Lewis Graham Coaching. Also, you can drop me an email, lewis@lewisgrahamfitness.co.uk, or my website is www.lewisgrahamfitness.co.uk. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I hope you have a good day, and I look forward to speaking to you on the next one.